Imagine a world so abstract that you can barely tell what anything is. A world so immaterial that it barely makes any logical sense, but a world that is nonetheless fascinating. You are picturing the world of Atari. Long before the switches, the boxes, stations, biblical references, boys, gears, and entertainment systems, there was Atari. From 1977 as late as 1992, the Atari 2600 held on. It didn't beat out any of the ruthless competition from Nintendo and Sega, but it stuck to its guns and, a few missteps notwithstanding, had a very strong and dignified run. It wasn't the first console to do what it did, but it's generally one of the first ones that people remember. Atari is fascinating because it gives a whole new definition to the term minimalist, at least by today's standards. You can hardly make out what anything is on an audio-visual level, the graphics are chunky, the sound is bizarre, but almost mesmerizing. And everything is so bright, flashy, and loud that your imagination compensates the lack of audio-visual fidelity. It turns everything into a big battle. So just for the lulz, I figured that we should talk about some old Atari games today. One cool thing is that the Atari can use controllers from different consoles, like the Genesis controller. It's really convenient if you don't have an actual Atari joystick. Also, it's got this little difficulty switch. Another neat thing is that it works pretty much every time, unlike the NES. Somehow every NES I've ever seen in my life has always been broken to some degree, but this one Atari 2600 never failed me. First up, we got Pac-Man. Yeah, Pac-Man, a gaming celebrity that is now 40 years young. Happy birthday. Funnily enough, this is often considered to be one of the worst games for the Atari, right up there with E.T. But honestly, I can't tell. I mean, yeah, it definitely looks and sounds like shit compared to the arcade version, but it's Atari. What were you expecting? Blast processing? Well, Pac-Man looks derpy as shit, less waka waka and more whatever the fuck this is supposed to be. The ghosts are all the same color and they blink in and out of existence extremely fast. If I had to guess, they're probably blinking in sequence so there's only one of them on the screen at one time, putting less stress on the hardware. Funny thing is, Pac-Man's death sound effect from this version of the game can be heard in Thousand Year Door, in Lord Crump's theme song. That's a neat little Easter egg. As for the game itself, it does what it's supposed to as far as I can tell. You play as Pac-Man gobbling up dots and trying not to get killed by spooky finger puppet ghosts. If this is one of the worst games on Atari, I'd say they got off pretty light. Then we have Space Invaders. Now this is almost like the Mario 64 of Atari. It's one of those defining games. It's a simple game where you move left and right shooting all the aliens while avoiding getting shot. In spite of its simplicity, it actually does require some strategy because the aliens start getting faster as you destroy more of them. Then you get down to the last one and it just goes, holy shit. Funny thing is, I heard that this wasn't originally by design. Yeah, apparently the reason they got faster in the arcade version was simply because killing aliens meant freeing up more RAM for the system to use, which allowed it to go faster. At least that's what I heard. If you switch the difficulty, the ship actually becomes wider, making it a bigger target. Better watch out. And each screen you clear, the game gets harder. The aliens start out closer to you, the barriers disappear. It actually gets hard as shit. It keeps you on your toes for sure. And speaking of Space Invaders, here we have Pepsi Invaders. Yeah, a mod for Space Invaders where you play as Coca-Cola and shoot the Pepsi. It was intended to be sort of a joke marketing gimmick by Coca-Cola and was originally given to executives for shits and giggles. But it was never sold in stores, making it one of the rarest games in existence. And no, this is not an authentic copy. This is a reproduction cart. Basically, it's the exact same game, except you shoot letters that spell the word Pepsi. And it's impossible to lose. You have infinite lives, and the letters can never reach the bottom. Even when the time runs out, big white text shows up saying Coke wins. Huh, very subtle. Even when they lose, they win. I almost wonder if this game is actually a masterpiece, like the blatant product placement is merely a facade and it's secretly some bizarre and morbid critique of late-stage capitalism or boundless corporatism. A simulation made by a brand to inspire customers to shoot the shit out of their competitors. All over some sugary drink that gives you cancer and makes your penis stop working. Is this what the world may come to in the future? Could corporations really sink that low? Of course they could, but let's move on. Yars Revenge. Now this is one of my favorites. You play as a fly who has to destroy this red shield so he can touch this guy here, which gives you a super missile, allowing you to kill that son of a bitch. But watch out, because every now and then he turns into a spinning Beyblade of death and charges you. There's also this tiny laser that follows you around and kills you if you touch it. Then there's this really cool graphical effect with two scrolling colorful voids, which give the illusion of a large cylindrical field separating the fly and the enemy. It's such a badass game. Then there's Missile Command. In this game, you shoot missiles and other projectiles out of the sky so they don't destroy your base. It ramps up pretty quickly, which could lead you to go crazy, but there's a catch. You have a limited number of missiles per screen, so you'll run out if you use too many. You gotta economize, but you also have to avoid getting obliterated by the incoming projectiles. You have to strike this careful balance, lest ye be destroyed. Then there's Raiders of the Lost Ark, based on the movie, of course. I cannot get this game to do anything. I tried switches, pressing every button, but it just does nothing. Turns out, this game is so advanced that you need 2 controllers to play it. I guess I should have known that going in. Unfortunately, I only have 1 working controller as far as I know, but apparently this game is supposed to be really ambitious. Either way, I can't play it. But hey, check out that music. John Williams would shit his pants. Then there's golf. Yeah. It's almost as exciting as actual golf. Then you got Centipede, of course. This one's almost like Space Invaders, except the enemy is a centipede that breaks off into pieces and moves way faster. And there's this little jumping asshole who won't fuck off. This game really keeps you on your toes. Even when you kill the centipede, it doesn't pause to go to the next level. No, it just keeps going with 0 interruptions. Now that's badass. Then there's Pole Position, which is a racing game. This is pretty cool actually. With the minimalistic graphics, it is unmistakably a race car driving along a racetrack. Huh, what an achievement. It actually looks like what it's supposed to represent. Funny thing is, these yellow things kept showing up. At first I thought they were like roadblocks or something, until I noticed they were moving. Nope, these are not roadblocks, these are fellow racers. Yes, you actually have opponents. That's cool. Then we have Video Pinball, which is exactly what it sounds like. The same thing happens here that happens whenever I play any other virtual pinball. I launch the ball, it bounces around for 7 years of its own accord, and then maybe I eventually get the chance to hit it with the bumpers. I wouldn't exactly call it fun, but hey, it makes cool noises. Then we have Donkey Kong. Yeah, that Donkey Kong. Before Nintendo had their home consoles, they licensed a few games to other platforms. A lot of the Atari games were arcade adaptations to begin with, but I feel like arcade games just started getting too advanced and ambitious for the system to be able to do them properly, as already evidenced by Pac-Man, and further evidenced by this game. Donkey Kong looks like a fat dancing re-dead throwing cookies at you. Pauline looks like Trad Wife, which I can't believe I'm making that kind of reference. Jumpman is an even bigger fat ass than usual, and the hammer floats around his nose with telekinesis. That's actually hilarious. Of all the versions of Donkey Kong I've seen, this is probably one of the easiest because it doesn't have 75M. Yeah, it only includes the first level and the last level. I can't imagine how 75M would look on Atari anyway. Either way, considering the constraints of the system, they probably could have done much worse. Outlawz. Now this game is badass. You play as cowboys and shoot each other. I'm pretty sure it's a 2-player game though, since the other guy doesn't do anything. Again, it's a real shame that I don't have 2 functioning controllers. Check this out, you can ricochet the bullet off the walls. Now that's badass. At last, we have Asteroids. It's a space shooter, but unlike Space Invaders where you're basically stuck in place and can only go left or right, this is entirely free roam. You can turn and go in any direction. Unfortunately, the controls are very tanky, and the ship also has acceleration, meaning that it takes a bit of time to get up to top speed. I always just run into asteroids and die. I am not good at it, to say the least. But it's a very important game, and it should be acknowledged. It's fascinating to look back at all these old games. It's like being an archaeologist, digging through historical artifacts. It was a time of experimentation and mystery. Trends were set that would shape the future of the medium, and eventually, this would evolve into something greater, something wonderful, something amazing.